welcome back for another video. Final thoughts and final video ahead of the deadline. We're going to look at your biggest questions and dilemmas this week. We'll run through all the key news from today's press conferences to be aware of for your teams, and some final thoughts on my team in the final segment. Let's get into it. First question from Fabian, he says, do we put our dignity behind us and give up on Calvert-Lewin? I love how this one's worded. Yeah, I mean, DCL has been an utter failure in FPL. No returns from 6 games on the bounce now. He barely made it past 60 minutes last game week. Not even guaranteed to start next game week either, but it sounds like there's a good chance based on Dyche's remarks. It's West Ham next, who have kept just 1 clean sheet all season, which was back in game week 2. But yeah, in my view, it's time to get rid of him. The 3 forwards I've shortlisted for your consideration are Cunha, Strand Larsen and Visser, with their fixtures below as well. I mean, we know all about Wolves' upcoming fixture run, so we won't keep banging on about that, but I would favour them as a DCL replacement. Cunha if you've got the extra money, Strand Larsen if you don't, basically. Visser also deserves a mention because his underlying numbers have been ridiculously good this season. He's still got 3 decent fixtures, Bournemouth home, Everton away, Leicester home, but he is a shorter term pick basically. You may want to sell him in like 4 game weeks time. Calvert-Lewin is statistically the worst finisher in the league over the last 3 seasons, and that's where context is key. Although he's put up some reasonably good numbers at times, his finishing quality severely lacks. Wood, for example, the best finisher this season in the league in terms of conversion percent. His underlying numbers have been similar to DCL's, but he's bagged about 6 or 7 goals after that run of DCL blanks. Dry Fruit asks, who are the best 4.5 mil-ish defenders for longer term? There's actually loads that I've got on the watch list, so I'm going to pull them all up for consideration. Obviously my favourite would be 8 Nori, he's not here, he's 4.7 mil. Though obviously make no mistake, they're not going to keep loads of clean sheets, but he's by far the most attacking of the lot. He's 4.7 mil, so slightly above 4.5. It's not a great entry point for quite a few of the 4.5 mil defenders this week though. I think that Concert, Dunk and Cole all have potential to be great picks, but obviously not this week. Dunk's injured as well, probably back game week 12, and Brighton's fixtures are amazing for like 6 or so weeks. Likewise, Villa and Chelsea come back from the break with a really nice fixture run. If you need one for this week, then Mazraoui and Hall will be the 2 I've picked out for 4.5 mil and 4.3 mil. There were lots of questions as well about Rico Lewis replacements, so this slide should be helpful for that. If I had to buy one this week, it'd be Mazraoui. If I was buying one in game week 12, it'd be Colwell. If it was game week 13, Dunk. That's the order I put them in anyway. They're all very close to be honest. Big question from James, Haaland, stick or twist? Now, last week my view was that with 2 free transfers, switching him to a cheaper forward to fund Salah was worth it. But I felt that it wasn't worth a -4, that in the end Haaland missed a bunch of chances and Salah scored, so even a -4 would have actually paid off. Assuming that your Haaland replacement was someone like Cunha, Strand Larsen or Isak who all returned. I'm coming around to the idea of selling Haaland, but in my case it's a -4, but it does free up enough money for Saka in game week 12 for Johnson, so it's a niche scenario in my case. And I do think a -4 is a hard one to justify, unless it does leave you with enough money in the bank for a big upside move like that in game week 12. I wouldn't sell Haaland this week unless it was to buy Salah somehow. Personally, the only other scenario where I'd consider a -4 is if you've got a dud midfielder like Eze who's injured, then you could make the case for Haaland to Cunha or Isak, and then that injured or non-starter midfielder to Salah for a -4. So for me, I think it's twist one more week and then likely selling game week 12 after the break. If any of you are watching have got Haaland and 1 free transfer, what's your plan, stick or twist? The craziest part is, over his recent bad patch of form, he's still the best in the league for non-penalty XGI over that run. And he's almost regressed back to his XG total for the season in terms of actual goals scored, having previously been on 10 goals from 5.57 XG. My view in FPL these days is if a player is consistently delivering elite underlying numbers, they will come good, and I'd much rather a player with good underlying numbers that's blanked a few times than a player that's massively overperformed in a purple patch. Obviously Salah's not in a purple patch, his numbers are great, but I think it's a good point to make in general with FPL. Almiron always comes to mind when he went on that crazy run of scoring like every week out of nowhere for like a month, and then he very suddenly went back to the bad asset he's always been. But I do recognise it is more nuanced with Haaland because he's the most expensive player in FPL history, and Isak and Salah should outscore Haaland and Rodgers for example. Let's have a look at what the markets are saying this week. Projected goals by fixture and the clean sheet odds for game week 11. Graphic from Rob T. So looking at the projected goals, Tottenham's 2.9 is top of all the fixtures this week, and then it's Man United 2.45, Liverpool 2.34, Man City 2.05. So Son and Solanke look like awesome captains this week, offering huge rank upside given the lower ownership, as opposed to someone like Salah and Haaland. That's the fixture that's expected to have the most goals. Spurs are also top of the clean sheet odds as well. They've been given a 38% chance, and then it's Man United, Liverpool, and then it's Wolves, West Ham and Man City tied. I'm still in 2 minds about starting Fabianski over Raya, though this suggests I'm about 4% likely to get a clean sheet, which isn't a lot. So if you're going to wildcard in Game Week 12 over the break, there's some really good 1 week punts on the table this week. Porro, Johnson, Son, Solanke, Bruno. PO7 says they're considering a free hit, something along the lines of Spurs players Cunha, Nori, Dalot, Bruno, and asks what's the best 11 this week. Oh, this is just one man's view, but I'd be reluctant to free hit in a single game week. It's so much stronger than a triple captainship, which I think is more justifiable in a single game week this season, obviously given that we've got 2 expected doubles as well. This is the scout selection for Game Week 11. They basically do a free hit team every week, which comes from official FPL, so let's try something new and look at that team and review it. They've got Sells in goal, Vardiol, Dalot, 8 Nori in defence, Salah, Palmer, Bruno and Bumo midfield, and then they've got Solanke, Cunha and Wood up front. It's a pretty good team, but if I was going to be free hitting, I think I'd have Son over Palmer quite comfortably, and I'd have Pedro Porro over Vardiol. My gut feeling says that Newcastle's going to be a much harder fixture for Forest, so I'd also consider Visser over Wood as a 1 week punt, home to Bournemouth. Lastly, there's got to be some better goalkeeper picks for Game Week 11 in isolation than Sells, Anana, Kelleher and Vicario maybe. Let me know in the comments actually, would you like the scout selection to be included in these every week moving forward or not interested? Last question and we'll move on. Panch asks, is Watkins a keep? I do think an overlooked facet of Villa this season is the immense challenge that comes with juggling the Champions League, and it's new to pretty much the whole squad as well, which could be why we're seeing some results like a 4-1 loss to Spurs, and then a loss to Club Brugge midweek as well, which they were favourites to win. It's unbelievably hard to manage everyone's fitness in the hardest possible schedule. That said, I look at Villa's games from Game Week 12, Palace home, Chelsea away, Brentford home, Southampton home, 3 home games in 4. It doesn't seem like a rush to sell when you're on the cusp of some really good fixtures. The only player I'd really consider selling him for is Isak if you've got a bunch of transfers, but that's a luxury move to me. I might even buy Watkins in Game Week 12 myself if I sell Haaland to emphasise that point on the fixtures. Watkins owners, let us know in the comments, are you keeping him or selling him? Right, let's run through some of the news from today's press conferences then. Liverpool first. So Jota remains sidelined for a while. Slot said he's not going to train until 1 or 2 weeks after the international break. So it actually could be Game Week 14 or 15 that he returns now. Alisson's still out until after the break as well, which we knew. In case you missed it, Konate played in the Champions League on Tuesday after fears of an injury last weekend. He's fine. Good news if you've got Spurs assets. Postecoglou says everyone came through the Galatasaray game unscathed. Romero's got a chance of making Game Week 11. He'll be assessed. Werner, Moore, Van de Ven and Richarlison all out. He said the following about Son. We brought him back and in the first game he had a relapse, and what we don't want to do is put him back into that cycle again. It's very easy to do. We're managing his minutes and building him up. He got a good 55 on the weekend and he got 45 last night. Hopefully we can build that up, but ultimately it's about getting him back and keeping him back. So based on those remarks, he might get around 75 minutes this game week. Lots of absentees of Palace for their fixture against Fulham. Could be good news if any of you have got Rouse, Smith-Rowe or Robinson even. So Nketiah has picked up a hamstring injury, so he joins Eze, Wharton and Lerma, who are among those out injured, plus Will Hughes is suspended for them. Maresca provided an update on Palmer. He said the following: Palmer's getting better and we still have 2 days to prepare for the game. Hopefully we can have him for a session, at least on Saturday, and then we take a decision for the Arsenal game. Obviously Chelsea versus Arsenal is the very last game of the game week, so it's going to be a case of holding him and hope he plays. Pep didn't have much to say at all in his press conference. He said Grealish is not available for Saturday's game, despite being called up by England. He said he doesn't expect any returners this week, so more or less the same squad that played in Lisbon when they lost 4-1 to Sporting. Savio started that one, KDB made the bench, Foden, Haaland, Vardy and Lewis also started. Final FPL thoughts on my team then. This is how I'm lined up for Game Week 11. Raya, Vardiol, Gabriel, Pedro Porro, Semenyo, Palmer, Mbumo, Johnson, Wood, Cunha and Haaland. I keep going back and forth from Fabianski and Raya. As we saw earlier, the bookies' odds suggest that West Ham are 4% likely to keep a clean sheet, which is next to nothing, so it's still a coin toss. I rate the Arsenal defence so much higher, but it is a tough game away at Chelsea. And there's big upside in double defence, but I would be counting on a Palmer blank basically. So it occurred to me just this morning that if I was to go Haaland to Strand Larsen and Rodgers to Salah, I'll have exact money to go Johnson to Saka in Game Week 12. I somehow completely missed this path, and I'm leaning towards doing it for a -4 now. It is quite risky because obviously Haaland's massive ownership, but Salah's probably will be even higher in terms of effective ownership. But further to that, I'd be exposed to international break price changes, so if Saka was nearing a rise, I'd have to go early on him as well. It's very tempting because then in Game Week 12 I'd have a 3 premium midfield, whereas if I was to roll and then make the moves in Game Week 12, instead I'd be waiting until Game Week 14 to get Saka, so a -4 gets me ahead of the curve basically. I'd have to bench one of Semenyo or Wood if I do it, which isn't great obviously. Probably have to be Semenyo. Would you be tempted to do it if you could get from Johnson to Saka in Game Week 12? Let me know in the comments. Pretty good depth on the bench this week with Lewis and Rodgers, if Lewis starts anyway. Thanks very much for watching. I've been working on a new stream intro which I'm going to use for the first time tomorrow. You don't want to miss it. We'll be live here around 9 AM UK time. See you all then.